This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
It is Wednesday, and welcome to it. It is a good-looking Wednesday weather-wise. I mean, good Lord. It's about as good as it's going to get. This is the best time of the year, and I advise you to make the most of it. I do. I mean, if you want to get out there and enjoy the best weather you're going to see, well, maybe all year, now is the time to do it. It is spectacular. There is sunshine in your forecast, and a lot of it, and great temperatures. Highs in the 70s, low 80s some places, lows in the 40s and 50s. That's pretty much across the entire state. A little cooler, of course, with my friends above the bridge. But overall, just absolutely spectacular, and I appreciate it. Now, I found this great column from Eddie Zipperer. He's a contributor to The Hill. You can find it online, thehill.com. Pretty good website if you're a political junkie. And, well, let's be honest, I'm a political junkie, which is why I'm able to sit here and share all this with you every day. But I want to read this. It's the four gifts of Donald Trump. And I saw this and I read it and I thought, that'd be a great thing to share with the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and do this from Eddie Zipperer. If you're a political junkie who checks the Real Clear Politics GOP nomination graph on a regular basis, you're familiar with that long blue line that stretches high above 14. Well, make that 13 other lines now. It's the Trump line. And it's been so vertical for the last 2 months that he's nearly perpendicular with many of the other candidates. Trump's reign at the top of the polls has been Wile E. Coyote-esque. The coyote chases the roadrunner over a cliff, but he keeps running on thin air, never falling until he looks down to realize there's no ground beneath him, then waves bye-bye and plummets to earth. It'll be Trump waving goodbye if he doesn't find something substantial to stand on, and soon. This week, the blue line finally began its inevitable descent, with Trump falling from 32% in the pre-debate CNN poll to just 24% in the post-debate CNN poll. Many conservatives will be pleased to see Trump fall, while others will erupt into angry tirades. Trump temper tantrums from @TheRealDonaldTrump and his faithful followers will dominate social media like never before. If that happens, Republicans should remember to thank him on his way down, because nobody can take away the four great things that Donald Trump has done for the Republican Party during this primary. Number one, Donald Trump destroyed Jeb Bush. Okay, so former Florida Governor Jeb Bush probably doesn't think that's so great, but it is. Bush represents everything that is wrong with establishment politics. Before Trump came along, Bush was in first place by a wide margin, and that margin wasn't the result of merit. It was manufactured by a political machine, a golden name, an infrastructure of big donors, and an air of dynastic inevitability. Then came Trump, who focused the brunt of his constant attacks on Bush, who now sits at fifth place behind all three non-politicians in the new CNN poll. If Trump ends up responsible for overthrowing an unofficial American monarchy, there are no words for how grateful Americans should actually be. Number two, our system of government was designed for an informed electorate. When the electorate is not informed, we all suffer for it. Armed with his celebrity and a completely fearless attitude toward conflict, Trump nearly single-handedly raised the audience for the primary debates by about 300%. Now that means about 20 million people who don't follow the news closely heard about the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, the Iran deal on nuclear weapons, the Planned Parenthood videos of butchery, and much more, merely as a side effect of wondering what insanity would come out of Donald Trump's mouth. A great candidate like Carly Fiorina was noticed by the masses much sooner than she would have been without Trump wrangling millions of viewers. So in a strange way, Ben Carson and Fiorina owe some of their success to Donald Trump simply because he's the one who brought in 36 million eyes and ears over a couple of debates to discover that they even existed. So it's good for them. Number 3, his divisiveness is somewhat uniting a party with multiple problems. Everyone in the Democratic Party seems to be on the same page politically. Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida is a great DNC leader. We want debates notwithstanding. Somehow she has created party discipline that transcends politicians and has trickled down to the private citizens who consider themselves Democrats. She's like a party whip that stepped out of Congress and went to work on the people. That's why they have a 5-candidate primary with 3 perpetually polling near 1%, while the Republicans have representatives from every division of the party with Bush and Ted Cruz as ideological bookends. That's why, according to a recent Monmouth poll, 66% of Republican voters want a Washington outsider to win the nomination because they are sick and tired of politics as usual. And number 4, he gave political correctness a nasty kick in the teeth. He gave political correctness a nasty kick in the teeth. And while his rhetoric has been too juvenile, look at that face, and too fantastical, I will make Mexico pay for that wall. For him to be taken seriously by any Americans, he showed that if Republicans have the courage of their own convictions, they don't have to run to a camera to apologize every time some fake outrage-driven Twitter liberal demands it. Yeah, I know he's still in first place, but Trump is, like the TV show Lost, all set up, no payoff, a promiser of all things impossible, a dog barking so loud that you can hardly notice he doesn't have any teeth. Maybe it'll be months before he discovers the empty air beneath his feet, but it is coming. I've criticized him as much as anyone on inconsistency in his remarks about Senator John McCain, as well as his general unelectability. Many Republicans aren't sad to see him fall in the polls. Many will not be sad if he falls more, but I hope they will notice that he left some very good things in his path. And those are the 4 things laid out by Eddie Zipperer, and that's on thehill.com, and I think that it's true. I mean, Trump exposed Jeb Bush as a weak and vulnerable candidate. He said enough to political correctness. He directed our eyes to gaze south to the southern border and how devastating what's going on there is. He also made us look across the ocean and say, listen, we're getting screwed by China and all these trade deals. We're getting screwed by these people over here. It's time to step up. It's time to be proud to be Americans. And you know what? I do want America to be great again. I do. And I think you do too. So after Trump, in this guy's estimation, collapses, like Wile E. Coyote running over a cliff with nothing beneath him but air, just remember, he got a conversation started that was a really important conversation to have on many, many fronts. So no matter what you think of Donald Trump, keep that in mind, because an informed electorate is a better electorate, and we elect much better people if we focus ourselves that way. It's Wednesday here on the program. The hotline number is 888-900-9966. This part of the program brought to you by Mesa. Good business, good health, and great schools. We'll be right back.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
All right, if you didn't hear it, a quick programming note. Yogi Berra has died at the age of 90. Just wanted you to know that. Legendary catcher won 10 World Series championships. We'll get back to that. And then, no surprise, Hillary Clinton, pandering as hard as she possibly can to the left, comes out against the Keystone XL Pipeline. You know, in a nation with 385 pipelines, this is the one that's going to save the planet by not having it built. Anyhow, go.
The Keystone Pipeline as what I believe it is, a distraction from the important work we have to do to combat climate change, and unfortunately, from my perspective, one that interferes with our ability to move forward to deal with all the other issues. Therefore, I oppose.
Right. Stop. That's enough. We don't need any more of that. Yeah, because we have to focus on our ability to. It's too much of a distraction on the other things we have to focus on, right? Because when there's a pipeline being built across North and South Dakota, it distracts the entire nation. I mean, the nation can't even function if there's a pipeline going across the Dakotas. Really? Well, she said some idiotic things, but that's going to be right there in the top 5. Dan Perkins, a registered investment advisor with over 40 years of investment experience, joining us here on the program to sort it out. Dan, welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on again.
My pleasure. So here we are. I live in the land of windmills here that I don't see turned very often. In a land where they tell me, we should expect blackouts, rolling blackouts in Michigan next year because 9 coal-fired power plants are going dark in April of 2016 here in Michigan, 1.5 gigawatts coming out of service because we want energy poverty here, Dan. We want to make sure that those of us that can least afford it pay the most possible amount of money and save and heal the planet and prevent the oceans from rising. Are you with me?
Oh, I'm with you, but I don't agree. I don't agree at all. I think it's absolutely ludicrous, and it is clearly, as you said in your opening comment, clearly Hillary trying to attract the Obama green energy people to keep them away from Biden. Should Biden come into the race?
No, Biden's coming in. And you have to wonder. The old adage is follow the money. Well, Siemens makes a pile of money off of windmills. I know that. And these other companies are making piles of money over solar panels. And, anybody who's blocking the pipeline, somebody else is making a pile of cash somewhere. So this whole green movement, it's a green movement, all right, but it has nothing to do with the environment. It has to do with people lining their pockets, in my estimation.
Well, I wouldn't argue the point. I mean, is there any solar panel company? I mean, we had Solyndra where the government lost $500 million of our tax money trying to figure out how to economically and profitably create solar panels. And they started to try and manufacture them in the United States and wound up sending the manufacturing to China and still lost all of our money. Green energy sounds wonderful, but from a practical standpoint, the biggest problem with those windmills that you have in Michigan, there's no way to get them into the grid at the moment. So
that's right. They don't plug into the grid properly. Yeah, you're exactly right, Dan. And you might be the first person besides myself on this program that pointed that out. The fact of the matter is, windmills create an unsteady amount of electricity. It surges, it ebbs and flows, and ebbs and back and forth. And so therefore, when you have a coal-fired power plant or a natural gas plant or a nuclear plant, it's steady on its input. Windmills are not creating big problems with the grid. You're the first person to actually say that on the air, except for me. I'm kind of pleased right now.
Good. Well, I've been doing this for 40 years, and energy is one of my core investments for myself and my clients, and has been for the last 40 years. This idea. I mean, right now we have the largest known supply of natural gas in the world. And I don't want to bore your audience with a lot of details, but you can put natural gas turbines on a platform virtually right next to the coal-fired plants and generate electricity that doesn't pollute, takes, I'm sorry to say, less people to run the plant, and does it more efficiently. And our source of energy is not dependent upon the whims of the President of the United States or a potential
Let me ask you
president.
this, Dan. Let me ask you this. You've been doing this for 40 years. The Environmental Protection Agency was shot down by the Supreme Court, so these 9 plants are going to be shut down in Michigan, though they don't have to be, because Consumers Energy and the other power suppliers here in Michigan are saying, it's going to happen at some point, so we need to move forward. And the critics are saying that it's pretty simple for Consumers Energy and other major power companies to do this, because if they're told they have to shut power plants, why fight it? Because we, the people, because in essence they're pretty close to being a monopoly, get to buy them brand new power plants.
Well,
does that make sense?
Monopoly. Most of the utilities are called public utilities, meaning they're under the control and the reporting responsibility of the Public Utilities Commission of the state in which they do business. And in order to raise the price of energy, electrical per kilowatt hour charge, they have to appeal to the Public Utilities Commission to get rate relief in order to do things. Well, they're going to have to appeal to the Public Utilities Commission for massive rate increases to replace the coal-fired plants. And you're right, we're going to wind up paying for it. And we still have these eyesores turning in the sky, and these panels that are not profitable. But you cannot take care of the 9 plants that need to be shut because of Obama and the EPA with the alternatives of solar or wind.
No, and it takes the other problem is it takes about 4 years to build brand new plants from the ground up. So I mean, there's a problem, and Consumers Energy said it won't be on their portion of the grid, but rolling blackouts will become the new normal for Michigan beginning 2016. Dan, we'll talk soon, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
There you
on.
have it.
It's always a pleasure.
Dan Perkins, registered investment advisor, a specialist in energy and your money on the Steve Gruber Show.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
The hotline, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. We've got Pat on the line in Lansing today. Pat is on the line. Welcome to the program.
How are you?
Doing well, sir. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great. You know, Lansing has that new gas plant that they built and everything. But you know what? When you talk about these coal plants being shut down in Michigan, I remember a report some time back where India tried to model this plan of shutting down their coal plants, and their whole country went black. They couldn't do it, you know. And I understand that they were trying to emulate what the United States is trying to do. So why don't they learn from that? You know, if they got to shut down a coal plant, then why don't they make it be replaced before it's shut down, or at least have the option to bring it back online if necessary? And that's
well, you can't because now hold on. Yeah, thank you, Pat. You can't. Let me answer the question. The problem is it's the Environmental Protection Agency, you see. It's the EPA, you see, and so therefore these unelected bureaucrats have passed rules. We're not being represented. They have passed rules that have neither passed Congress or passed muster with the American people that are shutting down coal-fired power plants under the premise that somehow we are destroying the planet. Let me assure you of something. This planet has gotten cleaner each year of my entire life. Michigan is part of the clean United States. And make no mistake, if you travel at all, if you've traveled out of this country, you will find in short order that the United States is the cleanest industrialized nation in the world. There just is no comparison. Travel a little bit. Go to Mexico. Go to Mexico City. You want to see filth? Go to China. You want to see filth? Or Russia? Or Venezuela? Or Brazil? All of these places. So when you talk about a pure nation, it is America. Now, that is not to say we shouldn't strive to be cleaner and better and be on the cutting edge, because I believe we should. I do believe we should. At Michigan State University, for example, I saw a story here recently where engineers and students there had discovered a way to make solar panels that are clear as glass. So, in effect, a solar panel could be the windshield of your car or the windows on your house without the panels on top of your house. Clear. Perfectly clear solar panels. And that's terrific. And I love that idea. And wouldn't that be great? If while you were rolling down the highway, you could pick up some of that energy and get it back. That would be terrific. But the fact is we're not quite there yet. The idea of renewable energy is a great idea, but we're not there yet. And what are we going to do? Go back to the dark ages, literally, with candles, and the day ends when the sun goes down? Is that the way it's going to be? Yeah, you know, it's absolutely absurd. Back on the hotline now at 888-900-9966. If you'd like to join the conversation, Jim is on the line in Okemos today. Jim, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Steve. I'm very concerned about our overreaching, overpowered EPA and what they are apt to do with us. I have 2 Volkswagen diesels. I'm worried they might want to come and get those darn things. They're ridiculous.
Well, apparently, yeah, those cars are in violation. Right? I mean, those diesel, yeah, there's something about the way the computer worked. They didn't crack down on emissions. Let me ask you something, Jim. You're from Michigan. How long have you lived here?
All my life.
All right. I'm going to guess you're older than 21. All right. Yeah, I'm going to guess you're older than 21. So here's the deal. Have you ever, in your 63 years, concerned yourself with walking outside and taking a breath of air? Have you ever concerned yourself with going fishing or swimming in the state of Michigan? Never.
Never. I've traveled around most of the world, and I have had that problem in other places, and they don't seem to care. But in this country, we are so concerned and giving the EPA so much power. They're way overreaching.
Well, and that's exactly my point. They're unelected bureaucrats that are, and they want to go so far as to control the mud puddles in your driveway, especially if you have any piece of land whatsoever. They want to be able to control the runoff. And we've seen, and you think this is absurd, but in states like Oregon and elsewhere, I've seen people that are getting fined, penalized financially because they have a rain collection cistern, because collecting rain from the sky is somehow stealing from your neighbor. That's how far some of these socialist idiots have gone.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and I wish I was making it up, but I can't make that up. Jim, thank you so much.
So if you can put your nose up to the nose pipe, the exhaust pipe with it running, and you will smell nothing. Yet they're trying to say this is 10 to 40 times more emissions than allowed. That's baloney.
And I believe you, Jim. They're going to try to hit them for $18 billion in fines or something of that nature. Maybe they're just mad because Volkswagen is now the biggest car company in the world because they're successful at what they do. Jim, thank you for checking in. There you have it. The hotline number is 888-900-9966. So there you go. Jim owns 2 of those Volkswagens. Says you can sit right at the tailpipe. I've never noticed a Volkswagen creating any undue issue. But with the do-gooders, the Crusaders, the green Rough Riders, if you will, riding roughshod over the terrain to reel you in so that your toilet only uses a gallon and a half to flush. Of course, you need to flush it 3 times, or your light bulb doesn't use enough power. Of course, when that light bulb breaks now, it has mercury in it. It needs to be treated as if it's a toxic waste dump site. See, so before you get carried away with this whole environmental movement thing, you ought to know the facts about how some of these things come back on you and how some of the actual end results are what we call unintended consequences. Well, one of the unintended or possibly intended consequences for Michigan, who relies more heavily on coal-fired electrical power plants than other states, is that you, living in Michigan, may find that the lights don't work as well. They might not work at all for a couple of hours at a time, or 4, or 6. Or you might have brownouts where you can run a few things in your house, but not all of them. Certainly couldn't fire up that 1,500-watt microwave oven because, well, that's going to take too much juice and it just won't let you. And then not to mention the energy poverty on the bottom end, because here's the real kicker on the deal. The people that get punished the most for this behavior of reducing our electricity are those that can least afford it, those on the bottom end of the economic spectrum. Don on the hotline now. Don, welcome to the program.
How are you doing today? I heard on the news just before our little talk about the EPA that someone got a $7.2 million grant to study why prisoners are committing suicide. And
I'll look into it.
It's really stupid. You know why they're committing suicide. Nobody wants to employ them. They get out, they're depressed, and they shoot themselves. It's like, how about if you split the $7.2 million up and give these guys a job?
Give them a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Fair enough, Don. It's a good point you brought up, and something, nothing we've talked about recently. But I'll give you this, Don, that when we have more inmates than any nation in the world, we might want to have a plan together when they are released to make sure they start contributing again and don't have a recidivism rate that's 50, 60, 80%. I think you might be onto something there, Don. It's the Steve Gruber Show, smartest audience in radio. 888-900-9966 is the hotline number. Remember, Dr. Ben Carson's still ahead this day as he's on his way to Michigan to make his first stop at the Steve Gruber Show.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, I'm about to catch heat again. Oh, yeah, I'm going to catch some heat for this one. I catch heat from some of my law enforcement friends over this topic, but here's the deal. Let me read you something. This is part of what our next guest is going to be talking about. The Constitution of the United States says, and I quote, this is important that I quote the Constitution, boys and girls, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Now, having said that, I've spoken to some of my law enforcement friends and say, listen, if we pull somebody over and we're on I-94 in the drug corridor and they've got $30,000-$40,000 in cash in the vehicle that they have no explanation for or any way they could have legally gotten their hands on it, don't you think we should intervene? And my point is, well, if you can't prove they've committed a crime, he goes, they've committed a crime. It's obvious. They're unemployed. They haven't had a job in 5 years, and they've got $40,000 cash, sometimes hidden in the doors of the vehicle. What are we supposed to do? It's a fair question. Jason Skorup here, a policy analyst for the Digital Engagement Manager at the Mackinac Center for Public Policy. Jarrett, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
And the topic here is civil asset forfeiture, which I think can run amok sometimes. But I'm telling you, I have a whole host of law enforcement acquaintances and friends who give me heat on this subject. And I'm with you for the most part. I'm like, if they haven't committed a crime, you can't just take their stuff. And having cash is not a crime. At least it shouldn't be. Although in America, if you make deposits of $10,000 a couple of times a year, the IRS might come take your money. So where do we start?
All right. So here's what I think you should say to your friend. So there's two issues here. One is the act of seizure, which police will seize property or money when they're investigating a crime. So if police have a reasonable suspicion somebody committed a crime, they see someone throw marijuana out the window or something, they're perfectly within their rights to investigate it. However, what we're talking about is the act of forfeiture, which is the transfer of that property over to the government. So what they should do is, if somebody has $30,000 in their car and they think they committed a crime, they should investigate it. They should absolutely investigate it, and they should try to prove that they broke the law. And if they did break the law, then absolutely, they should be able to forfeit that money and that property over to the government. Nobody has a right to stolen property or to proceeds from criminal activity. But
True. So let me stop you right there. Here's the fundamental question in that sentence. Then, the fundamental question is: if they pull over the driver on I-94 and they have $30,000 cash in their car, should they be able to take the cash on the spot?
They should be able to seize the cash in order to investigate the crime, which is what happens right now. Just as if they had a gun or something that they believe that they were committing a crime with. Police are allowed to do that right now, whatever the laws are for forfeiture in the state. But what we're saying, what our position is, and probably what your position is, and most people, is they should not be able to keep that money unless they convict the person of a crime. And what you're seeing here in Michigan and states all around the country is they're taking that money, or they're taking vehicles on the suspicion of criminal activity, and they're keeping it. They're transferring that over to the government. So we're focused a lot on that second part. So right now in Michigan, if police suspect your vehicle or your money is involved with criminal activity, and that's the key here. That's how this is
so that's the key, and I don't disagree with you there, because part of the problem is, and again, we've had these conversations, me and some members of law enforcement, in detail because of the conversations here on the program, and they hold me accountable, and that's okay, and they challenge my positions, which is good, because I want it to be an open and free conversation. But the point is, some of these forfeiture laws are written in such a way that these some people don't have to be convicted of anything. You lose your money, you lose your car, you lose it, and you haven't been convicted of anything. Therein lies the biggest rub of all. I don't know. I don't know that it's appropriate.
2 women were driving home from work, and one of them had to stop at the bank. So her friend dropped her off, and her friend went and circled the block to come back around and pick her up. And the police said that she made eyes at people, at passing motorists, and so they seized and forfeited her vehicle. They never convicted her of a crime, so basically they accused her of being a prostitute. These women worked for the Red Cross. They were still in their Red Cross outfits. They had their Red Cross badges on them, and police forfeited their property away. Now, if that can happen here in Michigan, in the United States, I would say that's a big-time problem.
I would happen to agree with you on that point. We're on the line with Jason Skorup, policy analyst and digital engagement manager for the Mackinac Center of Public Policy. But these laws seem to be slow in changing, because here's the other thing that I think creates a problem. These law enforcement agencies have a financial interest in collecting assets from private citizens, because that can then be put into the kitty for their new vehicles and rifles and uniforms and other gear they may need, gears and toys and different things. So if the police have a financial advantage and interest in forfeiture, that's probably not a good relationship either.
You're exactly right. So right now the money and property that's forfeited and then auctioned off goes right back to the local police department. Now, I agree that lots of police departments, lots of law enforcement, we should probably be spending more money on. However, we don't want a system set up where you have incentives to do this type of thing, because we believe, as conservatives and believe in small government, that incentives matter. And so you get, when times are tough and budgets are tight, you end up seeing a lot more forfeitures in different areas and a lot more areas of abuse. So we have a study that's coming out early next week, next Tuesday, and we just lay out what's happening in Michigan, and what we call for are 3 things. 1, the elimination of civil forfeiture, which means forfeiture civil, but so you can only forfeit property after convicting someone of a crime, and also don't allow that money to go right back to the local department. Have it go to a state fund or something like that.